So we've spoken about the prohibition against owning chametz and how we must check our homes the night before Pesach to ensure there's no chametz. Now, many people will do a sale of chametz, and it's important to understand what it's all about and the various issues with this. So the first source for this is already in the words of the Hachamim in the Tosefta, which gives us a very specific context of what this was about. It tells us that a Jew and a non-Jew who are traveling on a ship together, and it's coming towards midday on Pesach, on the day before Pesach, which we've learned that an hour before midday on the eve of Pesach, a person needs to dispose of all chametz, and he's coming towards that time, and he sees he's got plenty of chametz, doesn't want to throw it off the ship. And so he tells the non-Jew next to him, I'm going to give it to you as a gift, or I'm going to sell it to you. He's allowed to do that, and he can buy it back after Pesach. And the Rambam, when he records this halacha, he records it in this specific context, in that people who are traveling together, and he doesn't know what to do with his chametz, he can sell it to the non-Jew. The Shulchan Aruch, when he records this though, he omits the context of it being on a ship, and he just writes that you can sell it to you can either give it to the non-Jew as a gift, if you wish to, or you can sell it to him, and even though the chametz stays in your house, it stays in your possession, but since it doesn't belong to you, it's permissible to do so, and you can even buy it back from him after Pesach. Now, based on all of this, some of the poskim were concerned that this doesn't become a widespread custom, meaning that whilst there are certain times when a person is allowed to sell chametz, but it's not the common practice, meaning you don't do this unless there are extenuating circumstances, as mentioned in the Tosefta, where you are together on the ship and you don't want to do the chametz, etc., then you can sell it. But just because you have a bottle of whiskey at home and you didn't get a chance to finish it before Pesach, that doesn't give you the right to be able to sell chametz. The Vilna Gaon was particular about this, the Beit Hadash, and many other poskim raised concerns about this, and therefore ruled that a person should not rely on this unless there is a hefsed meruba, there is a great loss involved. And therefore shops which have chametz, and obviously they need to have chametz after Pesach, and they can't get rid of all the chametz before Pesach, simply doesn't work commercially. So then they can sell their chametz. A person who has sells whiskey, a person who's got a big whiskey collection, and there'll be a huge loss to be able to have to sell that before Pesach, that's understandable. But a regular person who has a bit of pasta, a bit of bread lying around at home, it would not be the right thing to do. And this is generally the consensus of the poskim, that whilst one is allowed to sell chametz, one cannot sell chametz, one should not, in the first instance, sell chametz for just minor things. One only sells chametz if there is a need to do so. And each person needs to decide themselves what is considered a considerable loss for them. Of course, a person should, individual people as opposed to companies and businesses, should do their best to be able to dispose of all chametz for Pesach. But a person who comes to Pesach and realizes he's got lots of chametz left, then if that person considers it to be a loss, a considerable loss, then we sell it. Otherwise, one should try to finish it off before Pesach. But it's important to recognize that this is a real sale. This is not something which is just done as a formality. It's a real sale, and one needs to recognize that during Pesach, this does not belong to him, which is why on all sale of chametz forms, originally what used to happen is you would give the key to the non-Jew of your house to be able to access the chametz on Pesach. Nowadays, we rely on the fact that we write the owner's telephone number or address, so that if the non-Jew wants to be able to access the chametz of Pesach, which is his right to do so, because it belongs to him, and if one doesn't give the non-Jew the right to do so, and one blocks them from entering the house on Pesach to be able to take their chametz, then that's not a real sale, and that means that one hasn't sold the chametz and is owning chametz over Pesach. Therefore, what we do is we write the telephone number, address, etc. on the form, so that the non-Jew can access it if he wishes to do so. And we also are specific in terms of where is exactly the chametz in the house, so that the non-Jew has access to it. And generally speaking, the more detailed, the better, the more serious it's taken. And it's important to recognize when people hand in their Hametz forms, it's not just, writing out a form and like this, they have absolved themselves from this. This is a serious sale, and yes, there are many details to how it works, and which is why only people who know the halachot should engage in the actual sale. Although in the olden days, it was done individually, but because there are so many details, it's become widespread now that the Rav does it on behalf of others, and they do it with all the details necessary. But when making the Rav, the Shaliach, your agent to sell on your behalf, one needs to recognize it's a serious sale, and therefore the more details one fulfills, the better, rather than just treating it as a kind of formality.